I hope you guys enjoy this video. I think it's way too long. I'll try and break it up in segments next time. Hopefully it shows you some tricks and things that other videos don't. And don't take it as the Bible. It's just entertainment, and there's a million different ways to put these Banshee motors together and make power. So I'm not responsible for anything you screw up when you watch this video and try to follow it. Enjoy. Since I've been failing to make videos, I'm going to give you two-stroke videos. You guys are complaining that I'm not making any videos anymore, and I understand. I want to make more videos also, but everybody wants their stuff done, and to video this and work as you're videoing slows it way down. But I promised I'd try to make some more. So this one's going to be a video of assembling a 4mm Banshee. Stock OEM cylinders with a 58 stroke crank and a 115 rod, 795 Wiseco pistons. And I just noticed this oil plug doesn't have a washer, so we will need a washer for that. I also noticed when cleaning this up to start assembly that this was whacked good once on the top, and you can see it's kind of flattening the seal out there. Now, I never try to bang anything back, that'll just break off. I'll go in there and massage it a little bit with maybe a file or some sandpaper to get it rounded back up. The seal should push right back in, and there shouldn't be any problem with that. Doesn't want to come out. Come on, there we go. Now, let's see if I can get that rounded out a little bit. Okay, you can see that I rounded it right back out. No harm, no foul. I just took a piece of sandpaper roll. Porting tools aren't just for porting cylinders. They can manipulate any metal or aluminum. That's all I did. And then push the seal right in. All seals can go in with just your thumbs. There. Not perfect, but way better than what it was. Here's something I caught just as I was putting the shift shaft and stuff back. You'll run into things. These motors are getting old, and you'll run into people that replace parts. This looks like it was a piece of threaded rod, and somebody just ground it and ground the slot in it to adjust the shift shaft. This is the eccentric that adjusts the shift shaft. It's a pretty good copy, except it's completely straight. These are offset so that you can adjust the shaft to where you need it on the star claw. I just went ahead and just did a whole new shift shaft kit, which includes the spring, the bushing, the lock, retainer lock, and a whole new shaft with claw and spring. This is all OEM Banshee stuff, right from Yamaha. We'll toss the old stuff. You'll get wear on the spring from the riding on the eccentric, and it'll create divots. This one isn't horribly worn, but it started to wear right where the seal goes, and that's what will cause it to leak out of this area here. So it's a cheap upgrade to replace all this worn stuff. It totals about 80 bucks. Now you do that throughout the whole motor and stuff gets very expensive, but you never know what you got until you get inside one of these. Now, I'm going to put the modified shift star in. And that's this little guy. Usually all the points look like this, but we round them off so the travel is less, and it'll help stop binding up your shifting from about 60 horsepower to in the 70s. Once you get into the 80s, you're going to want to do a complete pro mod, which is where we start cutting every other ear out of the gears so the dogs can engage. This is an all-stock transmission. All you have to do is just spin all the gears and make sure they're not crunching or binding, and all your sliders are going back and forth real nice. Spin them, make sure none of these teeth are chipped, because they will chip and break. Even under all stock horsepower, I've seen them, you know. Maintenance probably has a lot to do with that. Maybe something breaking off somewhere. But this one looks very nice. Everything slides and rolls really nice. I don't see any broken gears. All the bearings on both shafts slide on and off. So sometimes they might get a little gunky and get stuck. Especially this one on the sprocket side will do that. It doesn't feel like it comes off very easy, but it does. It'll slide right off. Clean it up, put some PB Blaster on it, maybe give it a touch of heat. You can pull these off. Now I'm going to put that star on. Just have to put a little pressure to get that spring back. It's centered with a dowel, and just slide it right over the top. And it doesn't matter what gear you put it in. This is in neutral here. Neutral is where that little indentation is in the star. First is there, second is there, and we don't cut this one because that's 6th gear and it doesn't travel back into first. Just a wee bit of blocker on everything. I know this is red and it'll come back out at some point. I just put a teeny little dab on it, and heat will let it come back out if it is a problem. And believe me, I heat a lot of stuff up in these old motors because a lot of stuff gets rusted, stuck, and broke off. That's the old lock. We're going to toss that. We're going to put a new one on there. Same with this. Put a little locker on it. Spin it in. Oh, gotta remember to put that washer lock on it. There we go. See how it sits down inside there? This is exactly how it's supposed to sit. The other one was on upside down, or it made its way around. Now I'll set that like that. I'll put this guy together. Just have to spread that. There, new shift shaft ready to go. I do this part first because it's just easier before I put the motor together. Little bit of lube. And that's how it sits. Now, I'm going to actually kick it into gear so I can get this claw lined up correctly. Put it into first. Now it's in first gear. And you want the claw centered, but I like a little bit more gap on the top than I do the bottom because all your important shifts are upshifts. So I'm going to adjust the eccentric just a bit to try to get the highest setting on that claw. So right there, I like that. And I'll take it out and lock it. Hold the eccentric. Double check it, see if I like it. Yeah, I like it. And lock that tab over. There you go. Shift star and shift eccentric in. Shift shaft setup the way I like it. Now, let's start getting that case assembled. First, what I start to do before I assemble the case is I'll put all these clips in. But if you're not pulling the drum and the forks out, make sure your forks aren't worn. I wish I had a worn one sitting around. The trash just went out. But normally there'll be a bunch of side load here. There'll be marks and grooves, and it'll be super shiny on either side of these forks. Side load. That's because it's grabbing those dogs and sliding them back and forth. And all the wear will be on the sides. And they can be bent. They should all be perfectly straight, up and down like that. These are beautiful. Not anywhere on them at all. You can almost see a teeny bit right there. But I mean, this is nothing. Just touching. Anyway, these should always be used. Half moon clips. This one keeps the crank from traveling side to side. This one keeps the transmission from traveling side to side. The bearings. Transmission will have a little teeny play back and forth, and this one is built into the bearing. So this one built in, and again, all these bearings slip on and off. These shift forks are different sizes. Two are the same size, one is bigger. These two are the same size, this one's slightly larger. So if you're taking them off, make sure you're putting them back right. And spin, make sure everything is nice and flowing. And we're good. Taking our crank next. These cranks are trued and welded on the pin. You can see the welds. You can see they run Toyo Japan bearings, all standard bearings. This is a 58 by 115. Now, I'm going to get a bead of sealant all the way around this, grab my little nuts and top bolts, and get it ready to put together. I put the seals on before I put the case sealer on. These are all directional. These little raised fins for the crank go on with the raised fins in. They keep that bearing separated. See how they ride right up against the bearing? It fits right in that groove. It's ribbed. No matter what stroke you're on, these all go in the same way. Little lube. This one just looks like which one would be the front and which one would be the get back. The large gap, which looks backwards, always is the part that sticks out. And this one is ribbed also. You just want to get it so it's riding in there. There's no fingers or anything to separate it from the bearing. This one looks correct. This one's big hollow part goes towards the motor. This is the sprocket. Front sprocket. It goes up over this easily removed collar. And don't put it on and accidentally roll it. All these have springs. You don't want them rolled. That's what keeps the tension on the rubber to keep the oil sealed in. There we go. Now to put a bead on this guy. There it is, with it all beaded up. I use 1211 3-bond. There's a lot of good products out there. This isn't the only one. Any case sealer will do. I like the 3-bond because you can have gaps up to 1/8 inch, and this stuff seals it. Yep, this is good stuff. But there's a lot of good stuff on the market. This clamshell design is one of the easiest to put together. Last couple checks, make sure your dowel pins are in. Everything rotates freely. Your seals, at least these 3 seals, because you have to crack it back open to replace any of those seals. Well, actually this one you don't. This one slides in and out because it's not ribbed. You can replace this from the outside. These 2 on the crank are both ribbed. You have to take the engine apart to change those seals. Now, put this guy back in. This is the clutch actuator on the case. New seal. Again, it just pushes in with your thumb. Spring. Leg goes right behind that little square. The hook up around its neck. And there you go. You can start dropping all the 10mm bolts in. You've got a couple different lengths here. You can tell a couple of short ones go in the very rear. All the standard ones go everywhere else. And then you have one super long one. Okay, a long one. From my grab bag of parts. Now, this tells you how to go as far as sequence 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Now, why does it start at 9? Because you're supposed to do the 8 on the bottom first. But since you put this on the top, I go around and just snug it up. Then I'll come back and do the top after the bottom is done. That one seems dirty for some reason. Let's see. Some gunk in there. There we go. Some dirt must have got lodged in there. And we flip it on its side. And we'll do all the 12s across the bottom. There's 8 of them. I'm going to go back through this and torque them all to spec. And before you get too far, just make sure everything rotates forward and backwards. Because a lot of times you can put stuff like this together and something binds up or slides. She seems good. The next step we're going to do is put on the stator and flywheel side because it's easy. Woodruff key first. And sometimes this will slip out. So have a flat blade screwdriver handy so you can readjust it once you get the stator on. This is a new stator. Some sort of aftermarket stator. I tested it. It pulls the correct resistance, so it should be good, at least for now. flywheel that's on it, I've seen worse. There's no way to test these, but if there's a lot of contact in through here and it's been roughed up, it usually means it's bad. The magnets crack and they'll run, but they won't rev out right. And normally, if you can hear stuff rattling around in there, the magnets are broke and it might not rev out. It'll act like a rev limiter, but you don't know that until you get it on. So we'll make note that this one makes a little noise. Doesn't mean it's bad. Doesn't look like any bad contact has happened in there. It's pretty straight. Doesn't look like it's been pulled. Some people grab jaw pullers and pull these, which flips them inside out and breaks the magnets. I don't see any sign of a jaw puller being on this, so it should be good. We'll see. We'll fish this in first. This has a adjustable stator plate on it. The factory ones aren't adjustable, and it's 0 to plus 11 or minus 10 on this one. And the Banshee likes timing, but it also likes to melt its pistons when you give it too much timing, when it's not supported by the proper octane. So we can only get 91 here in California. I know a lot of places can get 92 or 93. The internet word of advice is always to put it on +4, but I don't do that as a builder on a pump gas motor with my MX Hardcore port and ported upper case. This thing will want to rev some serious RPM, and I don't trust the pump gas, because out here in the sand, you put +4 with 91 on pump gas domes. My pump gas domes will make 140 kicking compression, and it will put a hole in the piston with just 140 and +4. Why does it do that? Because the sand puts a lot of load on the motor, and a port job revs the motor a lot faster, so you're a lot more prone to detonation. So you got to be careful. This one, again, set to factory timing, and tightened up. It just moved just a hair, so I'm going to move it back. And that looks good. Give it a little tighten. Woodruff key still sitting in there. Got to get it flat as possible to try to get the flywheel on. Sometimes you don't always do this on the first try. But I'm a professional. No, I don't always get it on the first try. Lock tight. Because if anything spins off, it's always this flywheel. Again, torque everything to spec. I will complete it. That's it. You'll want to check the gap here. I'm going to check it. It's 18 thousandths. I keep a cheater right here. Basically a cereal box top. Perfect. Starting on the clutch side, I will put this little case holder clip in first. Loctited the screws. Take note of this bearing. I see these in backwards a lot. The open side that exposes the bearing is on the inside where the transmission is, so it can get lubricated. Why can't it get lubricated on this side? Because a big flat washer goes here and blocks this whole thing. The washers space the clutch basket out, so you definitely want it lubricated. You need it pointed to the inside. Now, primary drive gear. It's got a little square key. Try to set it in there like it was before. There we go. Primary drive gear. We're going to throw a little lube on this, and this is machined, so it's a pretty precision fit. You have to get it on there perfectly square, and when you pop it in, sometimes that spring jumps off. You don't want that spring or that edge folded. So let me start that over again. Doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes if you just massage the lip out on it, try it again. That's a tight one. So I'm going to walk it around. On. I'm a little blind, so I want to make sure the rib isn't folded, and it is. It's folded right there. This one's being a little bit of a pain. There, unfolded it. You want to make sure that it's good, because if this leaks, it's going to suck your transmission clutch oil in to your crank, and then it's going to burn it out the exhaust. So your right exhaust will smoke like a choo-choo train. And you'll wonder why all your transmission fluid is missing. Transmission oil will be low, and you will smoke like a choo-choo train out of the right tailpipe only. Okay, this can be a case where you can lose air. Gets air gapped. Everything's machined pretty good, but a little bit of a loose machining job here with the key, or where it'll suck oil through here and get it into the crank valley too. So I like to just put a little bit of 3-bond in there. This is the water pump gear. We're going to put a little Loctite. Compression washer. You can see that it's beveled. You want the inner side sticking out, so it's concaved this way and flattens as you put this nut on. torque to spec. The side water tube feed here was pulled out. This motor was sent to me half taken apart. I think somebody started it and thought they were in over their head, and decided to send it in. So I'm going to insert this aluminum water feed back through the side case here, get it lined up right, get it tightened up. So it's just a little clip that holds it from popping back out, and you can finger that back on. Sits in that second groove, that way it doesn't fall out. And then you put a O-ring on it. Make sure the groove and everything's clean so it'll seal. There we go. Tighten that screw back up so it doesn't go sliding around and leaking water. And we'll do the other side when we get the head on. Let's see, what do we step into next here? This can always just hang off there. This is a pretty simple insertion. This is the stop that goes up against the case. It'll end up here. And this will insert there. This piece here will insert into the case right there. And you just have to make sure that it's all put together right. You can do a quick disassembly. Slide the gear on. The gear is keyed. This has a hole in it, and there's a couple of them, 180 degrees apart. Slide that plastic piece in. There you go. Let's see, idle kick gear next. Ooh. He sent the pieces. This is going to have to be replaced. The idle kick gear is not missing any teeth, but I can tell that that brass washer is toast. Actually, the brass bushing, I should say. We'll get new pieces. Press them in. All new OEM pieces for this gear. All I have to do is press in this center piece and press out the old one. Take it over to the press and get her done. Okay, the old one is out. You can see how gnarled up that was. Just completely worn out. Press the new one in. And slide it right on. The new D-washer and clip. Not gonna let me do it with my nail. It just needs a little spread. I thought I could push it on. There we go. Good as new. This goes to the trash. Now, customer wants a new basket. And here's the washers I was telling you about. Now this washer up against this bearing will start it if it was flipped the other way. Now you guys are knowing how you're blowing those bearings out. Put them on backwards. Doesn't always happen, but that's what I would point to if one of those goes out. Okay, let's see how bad a shape this basket's in. A little worn. Oh yeah, the back of this basket has been hammered a little bit. We'll get them fixed up, get a new one. We'll also get this replaced with the pancake bearing. This is keyed in. So when this is spinning 10,000 RPMs and it grabs that clutch basket, spins the whole thing when engaged. This is where the ball rides. Your rod rides in there and it welds it all together. Couldn't believe that that'd be that much heat in oil, because it's literally sunken in oil when it does that. We'll put a pancake bearing that'll allow it to free spin separate, so the engagements will all be bearings like they were supposed to come from the factory, like Honda did. Didn't have to do this to a Honda. Don't lose that ball. Okay, you grind off the back of all the rivets. And then you just take a punch and punch them out. There we go. And the plate just comes right up. And there's all the cushions inside. You can see that they are a little bit different in size as they wear. I've taken these things apart with these things have just crumbled and fell out. This all goes in the trash. Then we get a new one after we clean this guy up. Can do the pancake bearing too. Get rid of this. And we'll install that pancake bearing in there. Also, these cylinders need new water plugs. Plug rotted all the way through and this one just fell out. We'll do that also. All new cushions. These might be a little bit difficult to get in this side. Sometimes you have to pinch them. Pair of pliers. Sometimes if you are patient and lubed, they will fall right in. Get them square, perfectly square, and then just feed the edges in. Loctite it all up. We love the Loctite. You don't want these things backing out. Definitely use red on this. Again, little heat and the red will let go. This one even has windows cut and you can see your bushings there, your cushions. Let's see. That wraps up this guy. Now we have to do our pancake bearing. Simple assembly of washer, the pancaked bearing. Boy, the wind is really kicking outside. You can hear it. Comes with the multiple washers. You can increase or decrease the depth. Slide that basket on. It engages the idle gear and the primary gear. Make sure everything's smooth and rolls through. All right. Washer. Inner boss. And then all the clutches. This guy had a new clutch, so we're sticking with it. I don't know what brand it is. Just every other one. Steel, fiber, steel, fiber. What's great about the Banshee is there's no different sizes. They don't have to go on any different way. Just fiber first, and then steel fiber until you're all done. This one's got different color fibers. There she is. Now, we've got a clutch locking washer and a nut that goes there. We already have the ball and rod in there. Whoops, wrong size. 32 on this guy. Usually just line that up. That locking washer will hold it in place. There it is. Ball and rod are still in there. We'll see how close we got on the adjusting this. It's not locked into place. Now this can only go on a certain way. If you put it on wrong, the fibers and steels will be loose. You flip it, it's 50-50 chance, and then there. See how it clamps them all down. Just hold it. Now, we can adjust this pancake bearing after we get all the springs in. I think all these springs are the same length. Sometimes we do 3 and 3 when we build these things. But these ones look like they're all the same size. So we'll slide them in. We'll start all the screws. Now, check the torque on all those and we'll be good. I don't suggest using any kind of power tools when you're assembling this. Disassembling, yeah, you might break a bolt off. Disassembling, you got to be careful. And then assembling, you might break them. But I've got a feel for it. I've got 2 different guns. I've been using those guns for 15 years. So I know where to stop them. I don't suggest you do the same thing. You will break stuff. Now, we'll see where that pancake bearing's at. Okay, we are all through adjusting this pancake bearing. You adjust it by holding the pancake bearing itself and adjusting that Allen screw in or out until this clutch actuator up here, the arrows line up. I like to fudge it towards the stator side just a little, gives it a little extra throw. And this pancake bearing should spin freely. That way your ball doesn't weld your rod. Now, these plugs need to be replaced. One just fell out and one is probably split in half. Sometimes it can be a little bit of a bear to get out, depending on how much glue is holding them in or how dry rotted they are. But they just pull right out. Oh yeah, that one's nasty. It would leak for sure. I use 1211 3-bond for this. Just liberally goop them up. I will let those dry overnight and then do a leak test on them by just pouring water in the top of the cylinders and seeing if they leak out. This is the 4mm long rod. You can see the gasket match, or what we call the case porting, that is done. This is a mono base gasket. You can pick these up. Just order a Cub base gasket at 20 thousandths and just Dremel or whatever tool you got and just flare the ears out. You just ink mark it, pull the gasket off, and then just flare it to the lines. A nice even flare. Don't go all hog wild, because you can go through to the other side right here. Don't do that on both sides. It's not a lot of meat there. Let's see, I left off with the cylinders. I put the water plugs in. I filled them up with water just to see if they'll leak anywhere out the sides or out the bottom with those new plugs in there. I did give them a quick paint job, because you put these motors together, they always look like trash, because these have always been chipped and, you know, cleaned and flaked. And I don't do anything fancy, just a quick VHT roll bar chassis paint. It's what I use. Yeah, you can go get them powder coated and spend a lot of money, but just a quick shot makes them look nice. And the VHT roll bar chassis paint actually is pretty tough and durable. Good stuff. The rings come with instructions on how to do the proper end ring gap. So a minimum recommended end gap is usually 0.004 per inch of bore. Example, end gap for a 3-inch bore would be 12 thousandths. So you just do your math. Boy, I can't tell you how many people call me up and go, oh, how am I supposed to do the ring gap? Well, it's in the package that the rings come in. Everybody wants to watch videos. Nobody wants to read. It's just what we do now. Now, there is no up or down, but I always like the numbers up when I install these. Just take the ring and the cylinder it's going to be installed in, square it up, take one of your feeler gauges, get it down in there, and make sure you got your minimum gap for the size piston you have. I'll do one side, and I've seen a bunch of different write-ups and videos on how to put these circlips in. Kind of push them in with a little help from my little screwdriver. Make sure they're seated. And they spin in there so you can adjust them. Just make sure they're seated all the way down. And there you go. Some people say, oh, you got to put them up or down, sideways. I've never had trouble with them no matter what way you put them in. I just take the ring and I just dance it all the way around. They got tools you can use and fancy ways of doing it, but they just go on pretty simple. Again, no up or down on this. I just like the numbers facing up. It's usually the default for ones that need to be facing up. They usually print the numbers on the top. Windows towards the intake. Remember, these pistons are directional. like circlip on this side. Make sure it's seated. There's one. Feeding it all the way around. And I'm just putting them on where the pin is. You know, these have pins. And you'll compress these when you slide the cylinder over. All right, everything's in good. I'm gonna get the piston to top dead center there. Line up the rings on the pins. Take the old cylinder. With all its glory in the port job. There's the water dripping out of it from when I just emptied it. Give it a little squirt. There you are. Rotate it, get the other one to top dead center. Give it a little fun lube. Get the rings lined up on the little dowel pins. Just use a little mallet to seat it. Don't be afraid to use a rubber mallet. I use this for disassembly and assembly all the time. We have 12mm nuts, of course, that hold down the cylinders. And remember, refer to your manual. You should always have a manual for every motor you build. It's just good to follow. All the torque specs are in here. Follow it. I still have it close to me for reference. Most of everything I know right off the top of my head, but I still keep it around because there's always something you forget, and it's good to refer to it. The pistons, the 795 pistons on a 4mm, a 58 by 115 rod will always come out of deck height just a wee bit. Not enough to expose the top ring. You can even do it on a 7mm and get away with it. But you have to have the correct domes. You can't buy off the shelf domes and put them on here. The pistons will hit the domes. So if you're going from a stock stroke to a 4mm, get your custom cut domes so you do not have to run a spacer plate. The durations will be much happier even if you don't get it ported. Don't run a spacer plate. Get your domes cut. Set it up with the cylinders at the stock height. It'll be much happier, believe me. You take all the ports and match them to piston at bottom dead center. There's a lot of other play in it. You widen, you lift, do all kinds of fun stuff so that you have a good running 4mm. It is a nice head. A lot of people like the one-piece heads. I like the two-piece heads. They're easier to install for me. There's more O-rings, but they just tend to give me less problems. This NOS machine head gives me the least amount of problems of any head. You drop these in, they're keyed. The key is a pretty big cut there. They're nice machined, snugged fit. There we go. Now, to keep these from popping out, especially with the one-piece heads, I usually just put a couple old spark plugs in them. This helps me out during assembly, because then I can hold everything without it falling out. And you can double check all your O-rings, and you can slide it right down over the top. And another good thing is to roll this through before you assemble. It's easier to roll with the spark plugs out because it's trying to create compression. And make sure your pistons aren't hitting. Sometimes the bore on the dome is so tight, maybe it's the same size as a piston, and there's a little wiggle room. You can center it up. But these do not hit, they're fine. All we're left to do is throw these little guys back on. These are also greased. Grease everything. There we go. Now we think everything's good. We take the head, the shell, and put it on. And I'll take this and I'll just run a little 3-bond around the bottom, because I like the way that seals better than the copper washers. So I'll take each one of those. My hands are all greasy, I can't get this thing started. Get it on there. There we go. So I'll do that to every single one of these. I'm always so paranoid. I'm going to take one last little peek under the hood to make sure all the O-rings are good. Yep. Inevitably, you will pinch off an O-ring. Always happens. Happens to everybody. Depending on how many of these things you do. Let's get that coolant hose on there. Come on, work your way back up. Ugh. Get out of there. Get up there. There we go. right, on to the next step. Let's see. What do you think? Intake next? Again, I like putting on the side covers last. All right, now for the intake. He had stock cages. We're going to upgrade him with the Chariot cages. These are just a billet cage cut by Chariot Performance. You can see he has an eBay store. He's got a few products. I like his head also. He's got a one-piece cool head. I actually prefer these. There's a bunch of them copied and sold by China, but their machining is going to be off. Their quality control is a little bit so you have to go in there and do a lot of cleanup, and sometimes our angles aren't right. But Chariot produces a very nice reed cage, and you just run the standard Boysen dual stage reed pedals. He's always been my favorite reeds to run. All right, these intakes are ready. Let's see if we can get them put in. One thing when you have stock intakes running stock carbs, and yes, you can run stock intake and stock carbs on a 4 mil. The stock carbs will do 70 horsepower, and if you're running pump gas, MX port, that's about what you're gonna make. So you don't have to upgrade the carburetors, you just need to put the correct jets in them, which I'll be doing a clean and jetting of the carbs right after we get these on. Now, these stock intakes have these bat wings on them. That's what we refer to them. And they will not fit inside cages, V-force or anything else. So you just have to razor blade them off so that you can fit them on. And that's what I'm doing here. It's just a quick razor blade. It's not anything technical. I'll show you. I'll do this one here for you so you can see how it's done. I just put it in the vise to hold it so I can run the razor blade around it. It's just very easy. Yeah, you can upgrade the intake manifolds for the carburetor if you want. But you don't have to. And usually when you're in a build like this, the money adds up fast. So you cut a few corners here and there, and you can upgrade later. You can upgrade the carburetors to bigger carbs if you want. You can upgrade the intake at the same time. That's when I would upgrade it. If I was running stock carbs or any carb that would fit in the stock boot, which is 26 to I'd easily 33. I probably never even change the intake. I just run the stock intake on it and just cut off these little bat ears. Don't cut yourself when you're doing it. Take your time. There. I'll clean this up and get the silicone off that was used on the last go round. I wanted to make note that these boots are in good working order also. No cracks. That's very important. The rubber is solid on these. So got to be careful for the cracks in the rubber that go through. It could cause an air leak. All right, let's get this done. Again, 12-11-3 bond. Don't have to use it, but again, when you've assembled as many motors as I have, you know where they like to leak. And they like to leak right around these intakes. I'd say 1 out of every 4 or 5 motors loves to leak in the intake area. It's not a ton, just a little pinch between the cheek and the gum. Get this one started. There you are. Intakes are done. We want to take it out. We want to replace the seal. Check the impeller. It's very simple. Clip keeper, washer, lift the gear up. Shows it's healthy. Sometimes they weld themselves on here if the bearing or something fails. This will get welded into the plastic and you won't be able to pull it off. You just have to get a little gear puller in. Bearing looks good. Let's turn it to this side and take it out. Impact driver. This is what you use on all screws that are putting up a good fight. This will probably knock the camera over. There's one loose. This is also Harbor Freight. In fact, I think all my tools are Harbor Freight now. Little gooey, but looks okay. Do a quick cleanup of it. Now, how do you tell if you have a bad water pump impeller? Well, we want to make sure it's not missing any fins. And this one is fine. No fins are missing, no cracks. It is in perfect working order. The housing looks okay because the bench absorbs all the blows, but it comes right out. Here's the old seal. And here's the bearing. We'll check this bearing out. Make sure it's got no crunchies in it. Oh my God. It's got a lot of crunchies in it. It even stops. Listen to that. This thing would have locked up for sure. That's why we check them. Brand new Yamaha bearing. And the water pump seal should say water side on it, on one of the sides. This one says water side. So we'll put this side in. All right, let's get this worked back in. Just oil it up a little bit. Water side first. This one is one I can't push in with my thumb. So I take the trusty Thor hammer, get a socket that's about the same size, and work it in. Then the bearing. Sometimes these bearings will slip right in by hand. And how do you know if you have it seated right? Well, this will tell you if you have it seated right. You push it in, and if you can't get this little cross member pin in, you don't have the seal seated. It should slip right in real easy. Just, see that? Plenty of play. It goes back and forth without any drag. That means you got it seated right. If it's hard to put in or you can't get it in, bang it down some more. Put the washer and the clip back on. Check, make sure it's seated. There you go. Here we are again. A little bit more of the 1211 3-bond. Yes, I go through this stuff. Just a little teeny bead. Keep it happy. So, don't want any leaks. It's not a real high pressure water system. But again, you only want to do this one time. Is the Kickstarter seal. Every seal, every gasket replaced on a teardown of a motor. And again, all these seals are pretty easy. They push them right in with your thumb. Never be afraid of the grease. So after cleaning this all up and a little bit of grease on the inside lip of this, a little bit of 3-bond again right along the bottom half of the case. Grease for the O-ring there. I've already slid the cover on and off once just to make sure everything clears good. Never hurts to double and triple check everything, especially when you're putting these together daily. So I'm going to flip this guy back down. As soon as I put the gasket on, I'm just going to put it right over the top. Center it on the dowel pin. Make sure you have that dowel pin in. over the water pump neck and just kind of tap it to set that 3-bond down. Bring it back over. And start putting all the Allen head cover screws in. We went with new Allen screws, got rid of all the... For the clutch, now we come around and do the side case. This has got the rubber gasket on it. All right, this motor is completely assembled. Get these carbs apart, see what they look like, see what needs to be replaced. Usually just a good thorough cleaning, and the needle and seat is usually wore out. We are going to up the jets to 340 mains. Not sure what's in here now. Pilots are usually 25. Just tap out the center. You can see the ring and the deformity. I'm not even going to take a chance. I'm just going to put new ones in. Our carb's actually look in really good shape and they are really clean. Take the choke off, clean it, just to check the what needle's in there and put it on the correct clip. O-ring's good, everything looks good on this. Take out the seat. We will take out the air screw, clean that circuit too, make sure the O-ring on it and spring are good. Yep, and the spring. Like I said, these carbs look good and clean, so we will assemble. Set the air screw, put the right jets in it, and she'll be ready to fly. I already know what I want this air screw to be for the jets I'm going to put in. I'm going to go 1.5 on a 30 Pilot. Okay, gonna put the new seat in. Put the hold down back in. The seat back in. And the pin through. Give it a couple little taps. And we're back in business. No adjusting for the floats as they look fine. We will put the big 340 jet in. .30 Pilot. These are the only two jets in these 26mm Yamaha Banshee stock Mikuni carbs. Now, you might be missing some of these pieces when you take used bikes apart. These used carbs. Washers will be missing, and that little plastic catch will be missing. I will show you that you just measure these with a pair of calipers, and it's 20 to 22 millimeters with the carburetor upside down, which shows it as it pinches the needle into the seat to cut off the gas flow. You just measure it from the side here, like so. And if it's between 20 and 22, your float height is correct. This one's 2186. And I already tested it to make sure it didn't leak by hooking it up to a gas line and making sure the float bowl filled. Just do that with both carbs, and that concludes how to set up carbs, at least how to set up carbs with the proper jets and air screw for my 4mm long rod MX hardcore ported cylinders. My MX hardcore ported cylinders, whether it's a stock stroke or 4mm, the jetting will be almost identical.